Christian, a dialogue with Muslim and Jewish Newground Fellows. Excuse me, wow. I want to mention that Messy Conversation is marking the completion of 4 years of work today, or this week, I guess. We started back in July of 2020 in response to the police murder of George Floyd and the rise of the BLM movement across the country as a space for the Antioch community to come together and discuss issues related to racism and our own anti-racist work as an institution. And so here we are 4 years in. I just want to very quickly acknowledge the members of the planning team, Sarah Beth Laurie, Anna Kwong, Elaine Parker Gills, Rosa Garza Marino, Asa Wilder, Clarence Williams, Nabi Supatran, and former members Kirsten Grimstad, Lisa Lepore, and Jacqueline Rose. It takes a village to bring Messy Conversations to you. Today, we're excited to have the fellows from Newground who are joining us due to Molly Vera's labor of love and generous spirit. Newground is an organization which fosters conversations and builds relationships between Muslim and Jewish persons and communities. And we're thankful for everyone's presence today and your ongoing support for the work that we've been trying to do in Messy Conversations as we think about and come to deeper understanding of our personal and individual responses and our institutional responses to the horrors and atrocities that we've witnessed unfolding in Palestine and Israel. Lastly, please keep your mics muted unless you're called upon to join the conversation. And if you'd like to join the conversation, if you have comments or questions, please put those in the chat, and we'll get to you in the second half of our hour together today. And with that, let me get out of the way and hand things off to Molly Vera, who will briefly introduce herself, the Newground Fellows, and the work of Newground. Welcome, Molly.
Thank you, David, and thank you so much to the Messy Conversations planning team for making this important conversation happen. It gives me hope when these conversations occur. I'm so happy to see so many of you here today from the Antioch community. Like David said, my name is Molly Vera, and myself and the rest of the panel here are all graduates from the Newground Fellowship and/or the Newground Facilitator Program here in Los Angeles. Before we get into hearing from each of the speakers, I wanted to just provide some context into our relationship with one another. As graduates of Newground, we have all dedicated ourselves to embark on this incredible process that seeks to build these lasting partnerships across faith, working to engage in authentic communication with the goal of change in our communities and society. And a large part of this work is geared towards combating Islamophobia and anti-Semitism and creating space for communities to learn to engage on Palestine and Israel, as well as working to create partnerships for change within our local communities on common interests. Within this Newground framework, we learned how to build a safe and open communal space where we could discuss our differences in extremely challenging conversations while allowing room and respect for self-definition in a time when labels are imposed on people and communities and frankly weaponized. We really pushed to build our muscle for curiosity over assumptions. As members of the year-long fellowship cohort, we started off this journey together by spending time learning each other's origin stories, which really provided a deeper understanding when it came time to talk about each other's pain and frustrations. We focused our time developing necessary skills on conflict resolution and communication, unpacking biases, challenging stereotypes, and really pushing back against this reductionism, which presents that there are these two sides, and recognizing that there is immense diversity of perspectives within our communities and even within families. I'm tremendously honored to be here with these courageous individuals and change makers who represent just a small slice of the diversity within the Newground alumni population. To give you a preview, before I do the formal introductions and bios of the panel, we have Adnan with us, who is a Palestinian-Israeli peace activist from Jerusalem. Elad, an ex-Hasidic Jew and progressive Jewish writer and thinker. Farah, a Muslim producer and journalist who recently returned from a trip to Palestine and Israel, as well as Emma, who is a local Jewish chaplain and activist. I will give further bios in a moment. Each of our speakers are going to have about 5 minutes, and then there'll be time for questions at the end. So jumping right in, first we have Adnan. Adnan Jabir is a graduate of the Newground Facilitator Program. Adnan is a Palestinian Israeli from Jerusalem. He has participated in over 25 different peace building programs and is a current board member of Tech for Peace. I'm sorry, Tech to Peace, and also a husband and lover of his partner, Michal. So Adnan, over to you.
Thank you, Molly, and thanks for this initiative. Happy to see everybody here, also Tasneem and Aziza. So I give you a brief about who am I. I'm born and raised in Jerusalem, East Jerusalem to be specific, to a Palestinian Muslim family. I studied in a Palestinian school, math, science, Arabic, the regular stuff, but I didn't learn Hebrew. And because of that, even though I was living in Jerusalem, I didn't have one single Jewish friend for 22 years. And also the Israelis, Jews in Israel, in Jerusalem also didn't speak Arabic. 22 years living in my city, which is supposed to be the capital of Israel, and I don't have one single Israeli Jewish friend. So I had one narrative around me. I heard from the community and from the news about Israel and Palestine. And one day I needed a job after I finished my degree in technology. All the tech jobs are in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And every time I go to the job interview, it's an Israeli guy wearing a kippah. I'm stressed in the meeting and he is stressed. And I never got a job. We're afraid of each other until one day I heard about the program Tech to Peace on social media. I needed that program because I needed some tech skills to enhance my experience, and I needed to, understand the people living next to me and I'm going to be working with. And I was afraid of this program because it has the word peace in it. For a Palestinian, the word peace might have a lot of meanings, which most are afraid that it means the continuation of the status quo, which is not justifying the Palestinians. And that's why a lot of Palestinians boycott these kind of programs, Palestinian movements, specific Palestinian movements, boycott peace, let's say, programs. But I went to the program anyways. And there, for the first time, I had a conversation, a dialogue with Palestinians and Israelis on a different spectrum, from religious to not religious, right wing to left wing. And on the first night, I had to sleep in a room with an Israeli guy in that seminar, in that program. I was a little afraid. I didn't know what to share and what not to share. But thankfully, there was a Palestinian co-director in the program, and that gave me the confidence to open up. after 2 weeks, that seminar of Tech to Peace has finished. I learned tech skills and I made my first Jewish friend. And from there, I realized it's not just black or white. There are many narratives to the same story, and there are good people on both sides, and there are afraid and angry people on both sides. After that, I came back to Jerusalem with much more knowledge and confidence to go to West Jerusalem, to Tel Aviv, and I started the startup in technology, and then I started hearing about other peace programs. There's programs for the environment, with sports to peace, music to peace, basketball for peace, a lot of other for peace programs. So I started joining them one after the other. I learned something from each of them, and I love them all. And I realized how much important they are, and the challenge is that people don't know about them. So I started advocating about them and showing them that going to these programs doesn't mean you're accepting the status quo. In fact, we're coming to learn and to build partnerships to fight against the status quo and find solutions together. So I'm anti-normalizing the conflict, the war, but I'm normalizing dialogue and connections. And I feel people need to learn this and need to go through this, especially in Israel and Palestine. Not enough for doing this. After that, I realized that the peace organizations not all know each other. So I started a forum to connect all the organizations with each other, especially the ones related to technology. So that was like my work before traveling. I came to visit Los Angeles on the 1st of October, 2023, with my girlfriend, Michal, whom I met at Tech to Peace. And the war happened on the 7th. I couldn't come back to Israel, Palestine. And then Michal and I decided that it's best for us if we stay here and get married here. And that what happened. A few days ago, I got my green card. And here I got the lovely opportunity to meet the people in Newground and Standing Together organizations. I have been involved with them, joined their programs. The best of the best, I cannot recommend them more. With Standing Together, we have organized protests, anti-war protests, and a lot of educational meetings and community building meetings and dialogue sessions. And with Newground, there was a facilitation training program that I joined and I loved a lot. And I recommend it to everybody here in Los Angeles. I believe Newground must be in every city in the US right now. The conflict has arrived to here. And it's not just to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Also, they need to talk about blue-red conflicts and all the other divisions and polarizations that are happening here. What do I want to leave you thinking about? The challenges. The challenges is that the peace content is not going viral. People don't know about us. And that's what I want to ask you, is to please educate yourselves about the dialogue peace building programs in Israel, Palestine, and share about them. And if you can donate to them, that would be amazing. And something I'm feeling very passionate about, which is AI. First, I'll tell you the problem. On social media, what bleeds leads. Always the violence is shared faster and fear is shared faster, and polarization on social media, unfortunately, even though there are many amazing peace content creators, but they don't get as much, viral as the other stuff. And that made me a bit depressed and go to innovative solutions. I believe that we should allocate a lot of budgets today to invest in AI because it's accessible to everyone. The answers to the conflict, it's promoting peace. If you ask questions, it can detect Islamophobia, it can detect anti-Semitism, for example, just go and talk to ChatGPT, ask it, do Jews control the world? And listen to the answer. You'll be happy. Ask it, are Palestinian terrorists? And you're gonna hear an answer. With Standing Together, we created a GPT, customized GPT. We taught it the theory of change of standing together. I'm happy to share the link later with you here. And you can ask it anything about what you should be doing to promote peace in Israel for the Middle East, and what should happen in the day after. Also, there were amazing 60 Palestinians and Israelis, young people that joined and wrote together a big document of how to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and what should happen after. For example, I'll share that with you too, and you can ask that GPT whatever you want, like what should happen, who should rule Gaza the day after, and that GPT will answer you, and many other things. So that's shortly about me. I'm happy to take any answer, any question after.
Thank you, Adnan. We're gonna save questions until the very end. But I really, it really resonated when you said the anti-normalizing war and normalizing dialogue. I really, that will stay with me. I appreciate that quote. Next up, we have file up Elad. Elad Nehorai is a progressive thinker, writer, and activist. Learning from his time in the Hasidic community and studying extremism, he has become an outspoken pro-democracy voice. Since October 7th, he has drawn on his Israeli background to inform his work building coalitions among those who share a vision of solidarity for the future. Elad's writing focuses on extremism, anti-Semitism, marketing, and how the three intersect. He is an ex-Hasidic Jew who, before leaving Orthodoxy, led a creative Jewish community in Brooklyn, as well as a politically progressive Orthodox Jewish activist group. You can find Elad's writings on msnbc.com, The Daily Beast, HuffPost, The Forward, Haaretz, and beyond. So over to you, Elad.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Adnan, for sharing, and congrats, Mazel tov. All right, I don't have much time, so I'm going to try to get messy as quick as I can. Just give you a little background. My parents are both Israeli, and when I was becoming Orthodox and Hasidic in my early 20s, was when I started my writing career, and I was becoming more right-wing because of that. And so a lot of my experience actually living in Israel when I was there was as someone who's becoming like more indoctrinated both religiously and politically. And obviously I've changed my views a lot since then, but it's really affected how I look at a lot of what's happening, both in terms of my concerns about what's happening in Israel and what's happening here in terms of right-wing and anti-democratic movements, as well as concerns about how we actually build bridges. So, for example, when we were at Newground, one of the things that really struck me as a marketer in particular was I was having a conversation, a pretty heated conversation with one of the Muslim members, and we were talking about what we were seeing in our feeds about October 7th. And it was really fascinating. Maybe a dark way, but it was really interesting because it was as if we had experienced completely different timelines. It was just, whatever we were talking about two different things. And whatever the truth is, whatever it's not, like, to me, of course, that's material, but I also think that this flattening of reality has really affected the way we talk. So I'll give you another example, one that's hard for me as a Jewish person who has Israeli family, Israeli friends, and has a deep investment in Palestinian liberation. The word Zionist, I think, is a word that's in these contexts sometimes hard to jump into. So I just want to get as messy as quickly as I can. The word Zionist, I actually tend to refuse to use the label, both for myself and for others, unless they themselves really own the label. The reason for that being that that's another example of completely different realities. So there are people who will look at some of my beliefs. For example, I believe in reality that ultimately a one state with democratic elections is the only sustainable result that can happen. Almost everyone would, most people would label that anti-Zionism, and yet I also believe in the self-determination and the practicality that people actually live there. And if that arrives at a place like two-state, or if it's more, then I support that as well. And I think that would, for a lot of people, describe me as Zionist, but what's even more interesting is whatever stated position I make, I know that it's almost immaterial to the way it's discussed, because people will label me Zionist if I say the wrong or the right thing. They'll label me anti-Zionist if I say the wrong or the right thing. Usually the wrong thing. I think it tends to be a label for excluding people instead of for including them. And so I think that's one of the big obstacles we have. Another, a flattening that I think is happening, and the division that's happening from what I've seen. I work with hostage family members, and a lot of them are progressive, and a lot of them want the attacks to end. They want the war to end, and there is a potential for a lot of coalition building. I actually believe that these groups are some of the best situated to end what's happening. But when we tried to build a coalition with other people, it was very hard. It was hard both, not necessarily for the hostage family members, because they're willing to do anything. It was harder more in the domestic Jewish sphere to make it happen, and also harder to when we reached out to some progressive groups, it was very clear that they either saw it as a compromise, or maybe dehumanizing to Palestinians to focus on Israelis at a moment when there's genocidal actions taking place, and that made a potential coalition that I think could literally end what's happening not even begin. And it's part of, and it's interesting because this is obviously an emotional issue for me. I care very deeply that Israelis are humanized and seen as human. But I ask myself a lot, the same question a lot of people ask when they agree in theory, which is, why do we need to focus on that now when people are being killed at such a horrific rate, and being 90% of Gaza is now, homeless essentially, and the infrastructure is destroyed? How could I possibly talk about what Israelis are going through? And part of that, I understand the logic of it, but the other part, as I was thinking about that and how I was going to share what I was going to share with you today, is that I also think humanizing is practical and effective, and there's just, I think it's very interesting to me to see Standing Together and others be ostracized by some, because there again, some of the people that essentially acknowledge that there are two people there that have to live together somehow. And and there's really a hope, I think, among people everywhere that one group is simply going to not exist. And I think that really disturbs me, but I also think it's really hurting the actual causes that a lot of people support. And it's, so I wanted to share that. I also just real quickly mention, actually, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elad. Really appreciate your thoughts and your vulnerability. Next, we have Farah Fazal. Farah is a documentary producer, director, and an award-winning multilingual investigative war correspondent and storyteller. She specializes in creating transformative, emotional, high-impact stories that shine the light, center the truth, and bear witness. Her work spans the spectrum of stories of war, misinformation, disinformation, cults, terrorism, extremism, immigration, refugees and immigrants, diverse communities, race, religion, social justice, and true crime. Farah recently returned from a trip to Palestine and Israel and will speak to her experiences. Welcome, Farah.
Hi, everybody. I am really grateful to actually go after my friend Elad and my friend Adnan. And it says something that I have a Jewish friend and a Palestinian friend who I love very much, and that they have together taught me so much about this current moment, about life after October 7th, about my own work. I'm a storyteller. I'm not an activist. I've always told stories of refugees and immigrants, of race and social justice, from the US-Mexico border to the Canada-US border, to around the world in different war zones. And I thought that I knew perhaps how to talk to people, because I've had to talk to people throughout my career who most often want to kill me for telling these stories. So I've had a lot of death threats. And I thought that I had come to a moment where I might understand how to talk to people who had problems with me or my work. And then I had a transformative experience right after October 7th, when I got accepted into Newground. And so after October 7th, in November, 10 Jews and 10 Muslims sat in a room. We got together on retreats. We had Zoom calls, and we lived with each other for almost a whole year. It is absolutely indescribable, the lessons that they have taught me about myself, about my confirmation bias, about my ability to be curious and to hone the muscle to be curious. And when we had to have really, really hard conversations about Israel-Palestine, they taught me that I could have that conversation. They taught me that actually conflict is not always confrontational, and that it's not always horrific, that in those moments of conflict, when we can talk to each other and we can come to an agreement with each other, when we can see each other's perspective, that there is change and there is hope and there's a lot of love in that. So I have experienced so much through Newground in this past year. And because of my newer found ability to be curious, I needed to be in much more solidarity with my Muslim, my Palestinian, my Jewish, my Israeli cohorts. And I decided that I needed to go to Israel-Palestine. And I needed to be there, and I needed to understand, because I'm a storyteller after all, I needed to understand what all of this meant to the people that I had come to love since October 7th. And I'm going to tell you this story because I think not a day goes by that I don't really think about it. I'm still in touch with the Israelis who I met in Israel-Palestine and have just come back within the last couple of weeks. My trip was beautiful, and it was heartbreaking, and it was transformative. And it was transformative because my Palestinian cohort allowed me to stay with her parents and live life for a little while through her eyes, and how she managed to walk around Jerusalem and parts of Israel-Palestine as a Palestinian woman, as with Palestinian family. And I got to understand what that was like and how dehumanizing sometimes that was. And I got to go to the West Bank, to a village that's being actively ethnically cleansed right now, with my new Israeli friends. They picked me up. And on the way, they told me that throughout their lives, in their early lives, they are all mostly sons and daughters of Holocaust survivors. And most of their lives, until the moment that they became a part of a protective presence, they didn't know a Palestinian. Some of them never thought Palestinians existed. We were on our way, actually. They were going to protect this village against the IDF's ethnic cleansing. And they took me along because in some ways they trusted me. They weren't sure they weren't sure if I'd understand. One of them asked me if I was Mossad, if I was a spy, because the movement right now to protect Palestinians in villages has been infiltrated a lot with spy agencies trying to shut them down. I think they understood that I was not Mossad, that I was a storyteller, I was just a reporter, and I really wanted to know what their work was. And so we went to a small Palestinian village. We couldn't get in because the army had blockaded the entire village. So we walked into the village. And the village people were incredibly happy and grateful to see my Israeli friends. They hugged them. They said that they were so thankful that they were there. The Israeli friends had really built this relationship with these Palestinian villagers because they come into these villages and they sit with them. We spent hours that day sitting, not knowing if the IDF was going to come into that village that day, but they sat next to 80-something-year-old Tamem, is a grandmother. This is her second time going through ethnic cleansing. And they talked to each other, they listened to each other, they told each other hard stories, and they were able to accept each other in that moment, that the Palestinians were able to, for a second, put aside their fear of Israelis who they only understand as people who are coming to attack and kill them and take everything they have. And Israelis who had to put aside their unhealed trauma and fear of Palestinians. And for a moment, it was surreal. I got to see a village full of Israelis and Palestinians sitting with each other because they're humans. They were human to each other and they could see each other's humanity, and they listened to each other and they honored each other's stories. And as a storyteller, there's really no greater gift than be able to see humanity in real life, in living color. And so it feels a little, I feel a little lost being here because I almost want to be there with my Israeli and my new Israeli friends, my new Palestinian friends.
Ferva,
They'll go back.
I'm gonna have to cut you shorter than I would like to, so that we have enough time for questions as well. But thank you so much for sharing the experience you had in terms of looking at communities in solidarity. Very much appreciate it. Emma is up next, and then there will be time for questions from the community. Emma is a Jewish and interfaith chaplain and spiritual counselor, currently working at Cedar Sinai Hospital and Beit Teshuvah, an addiction treatment center. Emma is a volunteer with If Not Now LA, as well as Jewish Voice for Peace, and has served as a movement chaplain, providing spiritual care to activists on the ground. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I feel really grateful to be part of this conversation and the messiness of it. Hard to get messy on Zoom, but yeah, so I'll share just a little about myself. I know it's hard to kind of fit it in these few moments that we have together, but I grew up in Los Angeles. My grandparents were refugees of the Holocaust and were refugees in Palestine until they came to the US. And my mom partly grew up in that land as well. And I have lots of family there. And back in 2018 and 2019, I spent a year living in Jerusalem, which was my first time being there. and Farad's stories were sort of reminding me of some of the experiences that I had, which was doing a lot of Palestinian solidarity work in the West Bank and learning about the communities there and the conflict, and coming closer in connection with my Jewish ancestry and faith as well. So it was sort of a very hard to grapple with reality that I was coming closer to Judaism, and also in a way coming farther because I was feeling confused about our relationship to the land. So currently I work as a chaplain, which I've really loved, and I work at 2 different Jewish institutions that are both not political. So it's been an interesting experience, and I've noticed sort of the way that institutions, and particularly Jewish institutions, but I've noticed other institutions as well, sort of have a really hard time in responding to the moment after October 7th. And I will speak just about Beit Teshuvah, my experience, where the response became so heavily pro-Israel. We stand with Israel, really all of these events centering, of course, which was deeply tragic and understandable. And there was no conversation about Palestinian life or experience. And it became harder and harder for me to be at the institution. I thought several times I was going to leave. And I started like slowly kind of allowing myself and talking to people within the community, of trying to find some others that I found solidarity with. But I think with time, really what I came to a realization is every institution, every person is like coming from the place that where their starting point is. And their starting point was not as holistic or as humanizing of Palestinians as I had hoped, as I had expected, as a liberal, progressive institution. And so I had so much judgment and so much rage around not feeling a sense of belonging. And if I wanted to have an impact, I needed to meet the institution where it was and where it was coming from. And they were sending these weekly emails that said, we stand with Israel, we're against anti-Semitism, and nothing regarding Palestinians. And so I drafted several kind of model emails that they could include, that they could send out. And after a few, probably about a month and a half, they finally began to, and me talking to my supervisor every single week and gathering some folks and having these conversations, finally began to include the narrative of Palestinians. And there's been much more that I've wanted to do there. Somebody put up an Israeli flag at one point, which I had to gather some people to take down. And this was a really painful time for me, but recognizing that we have a choice. We either create new institutions that represent us, or we meet the institution where they're at. And I think thinking about Antioch or other places, I don't know so much of the details. I know my mom actually was a therapist and taught at Antioch back in the day, but I have just noticed this value of really being able to have this conversation, to not shy away from it, to hold my own sense of faith and finding belonging. And I also just wanted to share, I have noticed how, because I am coming specifically from the Jewish lens, but there's been lots of anti-Semitism that people have experienced as well, which makes many Jews feel in a sense of threat. And it can be really hard to find this place of solidarity when we're experiencing this personal threat. And I've also noticed the more vocal Jewish voices for anti-occupation and for Palestinian solidarity, the more possible it feels for the world to come together. I had a friend, she's actually half Egyptian and half Jewish, Ashkenazi Jewish, and came back from Egypt recently and felt that the community, the Egyptian community, had for the first time seen so much vocal Jewish solidarity that it felt like our worlds were coming closer and closer together, which sometimes it feels like we're feeling more and more polarized. And remembering that, and that's why this New Ground experience has been so valuable too. The more that we really have clarity of our solidarity and vocal conversations around desiring true justice and true peace, the more things feel really possible and the less room there is for this polarization and hate. I was going to time myself, but I forgot to. So I imagine I might be at my 5 minutes, but I don't know. Molly.
I really appreciate how you've wrapped this conversation in such a beautiful way. I'm glad that you were our final speaker. And David, I believe now I'll turn it over to the Messy Conversations team to moderate the questions.
Yes, thanks, Molly, and thanks to each of our speakers. A lot of food for thought, yeah, we have a few comments or questions in the chat. I want to call first on Lisa Munoz. Lisa, would you like to bring your voice into the conversation?
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. My question is, in terms of planting and sowing the seeds of peace for bridge building, can you discuss commonalities between Jews and Palestinians?
I feel like Adnan is good for that one.
Commonalities between Jews and Palestinians. Well, in my case, we both live in the same house. That's in common. We eat the same food. We go on the same streets in Jerusalem, not in the West Bank. We buy and sell to each other, at least in Jerusalem and in Jaffa and in Haifa, in Nazareth. And here, I just asked that question to the AI bot that I shared with, and I'm reading, it's funny. It says, we together fight systematic oppression of inequality. Our daily interactions and economical interdependence create a foundation for broader cooperation. Our communities value personal, social, and economical fulfillment. We prioritize youth empowerment through education and community involvement, cultural exchange programs that break down stereotypes and build personal connections. That's all true. And you can now access all these answers just from the link I have shared with you.
Anyone else want to pick up Lisa's question?
Sure. There's a person that was in our group that is I think she's in Egypt now. She's a Palestinian named Ruba, that I think all of us were very moved by. And I respect Ruba so much, but what I was really surprised by was how much we connected on a very like deep, non-artificial, like interfaith, interconnected chat kind of, vibe. It was a very deep connection very quickly. And the more we talked about it afterwards and outside of New Ground, the more we kind of came to this understanding that, wherever we might disagree or be in different places, which is not as much as you might think, we share like very, very similar values, very much, in particular, like the valuing of life. And I remember of all lives. And I remember having like an exercise that brought this out in a way that was very difficult at the time, but kind of forced all of us, not just me and her, but like everyone to really face the fact that a lot of times we assume that other people don't share something like a basic value like that. Especially when we're afraid, we tend to assume those things. So it may seem a little simplistic, but I actually think that's been like the core of our connection besides all the food. I think she makes amazing food, by the way. I was supposed to bring food home for my kids to eat, and then I ate it all before they could eat it. And now they're very upset with me. But yeah, so I really was moved by it, and I'm very grateful that, you know, a lot of us after Newground are not just chatting, but are talking about doing more together. So, and I think that has to do with those shared values that are deeper than a stated position.
Thank you, Elad. Anyone else, or should we move on? There's a sort of a related, it's a comment more than a question. Forgive me for no doubt mispronouncing your name, but Wei Chen. You have a comment in the chat. Would you like to bring that into the conversation?
Oh, thank you. I wasn't expecting this. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. It was so moving. Very similar to the question that was asked before. I was just commenting on, we bond more through commonalities than differences, and I just love to hear more about that. I know you also said, explained some of it, but I don't know if there's anything more to be said. But that was all.
I can speak to the differences portion, in that when we came in day one in Newground, we started off the year with a overnight retreat for 3 days, sleeping together and communing together. And I remember thinking in the beginning that there were particular individuals, and Elad, I'll call you out, you're one of them, who I felt the farthest apart from. And Elad is one of the people I feel the closest to now. And I think that's a testament to, as a psychology student, I know that we tend to focus on things that are so much like ourselves and become upset about them, like with our family. And that it was the commonalities that I didn't see that I understood as a difference. And the more that I got to know individuals that I felt the most difference from, I realized that actually what I was getting triggered by was actually some very strong similarities. It just took the time to go beneath the surface and realize why I was feeling triggered, and to get to know the human being behind that, and to develop just such a deep love for these individuals.
Thank you, Molly. I saw that Rosa Garza Marino also has some comments in the chat around technology and AI and so on. Rosa?
Yeah, well, it was more like a comment thanking, so hello guys, appreciating Adnan, your initiative to apply what you love, what you care about in your profession to something that has to do with your mission and your purpose. So it's just that is a great example. And just coincidentally, a few days ago, I was thinking about the irreconcilable. What is irreconcilable, right? And how this issue of people or groups insisting on remaining on higher moral ground, comparing to others, and remind me of what happens not only in the real world, it can happen inside institutions, inside families, in the classroom. The idea of staying in the higher moral ground, sticking to that, is a very pre-colonial kind of energy, predominating and trying to just give a lesson to others that my values and whatever I'm standing for is more important than yours, and I'm not gonna be involved in having a conversation about that. So just encountering with this energy, dominating, colonializing energy over the higher moral ground is just something that we have been grappling with it, I think, since October 7 and probably way before. This is something that keeps coming back. So it was just more like a comment, guys. But I appreciate the opportunity to articulate it with here our colleagues and stuff.
Thank you, Rosa. I see that Maggie Shi has a question.
I was hoping I don't have to speak, but okay.
No, we're not going to let you get away with that.
I so moving. Thank you so much for these kind of conversations. I know these are the type of things that it's not just stuff you guys talk about. There's just happens all over the world with a lot of ethnic cleansing and things like that. I'm just curious because since we're in LA, where can we participate? Where can we just be part of those conversations? You know, I don't have to be Jewish or Palestinian, right? But I could be there, and I'm just curious where would that be? So
Yeah, so I just shared the link answering that question, which is the link to the Instagram of Standing Together Los Angeles. There they post in their stories, in their posts about upcoming events, gatherings, whether it's a protest or educational dialogue setting. And there, once you enter that page, look at the bio, there's a link that will take you to the WhatsApp group. And there you will see more announcements than what is just posted on the Instagram page.
thank you.
Thank you. Also, Newground, I don't know, do you have any new opening events?
Our executive director is quietly sitting in the back here, Aziza Hassan.
Thank you, Molly. I am grateful for this beautiful labor of love, and I feel like this it's actually a perfect opportunity to if you want to hear more from Farah and Elad, they'll be focusing more on extremism and what it means to really dig into misinformation and how we can be more aware of the things we do within ourselves and also in community and how we inadvertently harm one another. And so we would love to have you on another Zoom, just like similar to this, at the end of August. And you can hop on. So if you go to mjnewground.org, you'll be able to find out more. And we'll put the link in the chat. Thanks, Molly.
And I want to thank everyone for sharing these resources. And I actually want to call on Asa to say something about how we archive resources at Messy Conversations and what you have available to you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, David. We do have a pretty robust online archive of all of our previous Messy Conversations, and usually a day or two, depending how quickly we can get to it after the conversation, we will go through the chat and add all of those links onto the page. It's a LibGuide page, and I'll put the link in the chat, and you can go through on the left column by quarter, and then it has each topic there in the drop-down menu. So if you have links you would like to share with everyone, you can always post those in the chat, and they'll be harvested and reposted on our LibGuide site. And the recordings are all posted to our YouTube channel. Not every conversation is recorded, but those that are will appear on the YouTube, and then that video is embedded on the LibGuide page as well.
Thank you, Asa.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. I've actually got a bunch of questions, but I'm not going to ask them all. But I want to say something and then use that as a segue to someone else's comment, Tasneem's comment and question. But when the conversation opened today, a couple of you mentioned the importance of curiosity in the work that you do, and it's something that we try to highlight here at Messy Conversations as well. And I think that works in a number of ways, right? One is, you know, do you want to be right or do you want to be curious? That kind of curiosity, and then I think Tasneem picks up on another way in which the curiosity works around overcoming distrust So I'm going to ask if you're willing, Tasneem, to bring your comment into the conversation.
Thank you, David. Hello to my new ground folks. Yeah, I was just struck by both Adnan speaking to this fear or this distrust of peace that he felt when he heard about Tech to Teach when he was there. And of course, well, I don't know, of course, but there is a lot of sentiment out there around the anti-normalization movement as well that stems from it. And then Elad talked about the flattening, and he shared some really hard places of how it has impacted him, both with the hostages' families and doing the solidarity work and Zionist. And I know in the word Zionist really has become a really hard word. For some, it's an identity, it is home. And for others, it's settler, it's genocide, it's like all these other painful things. And so in a space where language is so like there's no agreement on what words mean, and many words have different meanings. And I know our fellows have wrestled with this. I was just wondering what insights they have or how they get around the messiness. Elad shared some of his examples, but how do you one, just deal with it personally, and then two, how do you deal with it with other people? Or how does it just impact you or land on you? I know it hurts me a lot.
I'll give it a shot. Words are harmful. Words hurt. Words help and words hurt. And what I have learned is that my trigger to certain words or certain concepts comes from the idea of my understanding of it. Maybe not what somebody else is trying to help me understand of Zionism, for example. I understand what that is in the context of how Palestinians might see it. And I understand through my Jewish cohorts what it means to them. But until I can actually be curious enough to ask and step back enough to listen, our brains are triggered. When we are triggered, we are not listening. We're not going to ask questions. We're not going to really be able to make a connection with somebody. So I have had to step back when I hear words and concepts that are triggering to me. I have had to say for a second, I just need to understand what this means. What does this mean to you? How do you define it? How does it live in your world? And what I've learned, especially now that I've been with Israelis and Palestinians, that they too are trying to find, they understand in a grander scheme what justice is and what it looks like and what it looks like for all of them. And words like justice kind of mean something to Palestinians and to Israelis. Maybe Zionism has very, very different connotations, but I didn't hear my Israeli friends actually talk about Zionism to their Palestinian villagers or the people that they connect with. They actually reframe it for themselves, even talking to each other. And so I think to be able to understand what people mean and how they mean it, how they have a lived experience of it, helps me understand perhaps in a different way and accept that that is a lived experience. And whether I agree with it or not is kind of really irrelevant. But my ability to actually listen helps me have some place to connect. Most often, during that conversation, if I'm willing to listen, I'm going to hear a really personal story of how that particular concept or that particular idea has affected somebody. Elad and I talk all the time about how we actually need to like talk to people one-on-one in small groups, so that we can make these connections with people and they can feel safe coming to talk to us, so that we'll understand what it is they're saying. And I don't know that I can really talk enough about how listening is so important, and it's hard to do. That was a really long question to your really short, a really long answer to your really short question.
Thank you, Farah. I want to recognize that we have hit the 5 o'clock hour. And what our practice at Messy Conversations is we formally end at 5, and anybody who wants to hang out for another 10, 15 minutes and continue the conversation more informally is welcome to do so. Matt, I did see your question. I'm hoping you can hang out and bring that question into the conversation here in a minute. So thank you for everyone, and especially our panel, and for Molly for bringing all of these wonderful people together for this conversation. We're deeply appreciative. It's important work for all of us to be engaged in. And the Messy Conversations planning team is going to take a little break for the rest of the summer, but we'll be back in October, and we hope to see you and a bunch of your friends attending Messy Conversations most Mondays starting again in October. And for those of you who are going to stay on for a bit, I want to hand it over to Matt, because Matt had a good question in the chat. Matt?
There we go. Yeah, thanks for your time, and everybody, thanks for your presentations. Love the work that you do, and helping us practice to rehumanize each other. I do conversations and trainings around race and decolonization and things like that. So my question is kind of coming from more of an institutional lens of kind of the zooming out a little bit in the bigger change. How do we extend my question's in the chat, but essentially, how do we address our institutions that are kind of holding into dominant positions of power? And how do we extend that conversation beyond just dialogue? Not saying that dialogue is bad. We need to be continuing to practice our rehumanizing, but continuing it to be beyond that. And what are, from your experiences, how have you found, what have you found to be helpful in organizing to address these positions of dominant power? So thank you.
Coalitions. Build more partnerships and coalitions with like-minded people and organizations near your theory of change. And use AI.
Adnan's advice for everything. I really appreciate that question. And I think that a lot of our institutions, and there's so many different like kinds, but they express similar values that we have, but we don't find them actively pursuing them as much as we would like. Like from the outside, we're viewing in and we see institutions kind of say in their mission, they're social justice-y, they're, progressive, or they believe in justice or peace or whatever their kind of framework is. And so I think for me, what I found the most helpful in like moving institutionally was like really bringing it back to what are the values that institution like it claims to